over here do have bees? Is there anybody else in you who has bees? No, that's, you have bees. You got bees too. Very good. So if there's something that I trip up on, you know,
But we're just learning.
catch
We
me.
just got
Okay.
our,
Okay. Okay. Very good. So the typical life cycle for a honeybee is 63 days. So they'll spend 21 days inside the cell from the time the queen drops the egg to the time they eat their way out the cap is 21 days. Then they'll spend 21 days inside the hive, working the hive. They're called worker bees. So they'll do things like feed the queen, clean the cells. They'll, move honey around, move pollen around. They'll feed the baby bees as well, the larvae, the pupae. They'll take care of feeding those. And once it gets so big, they'll cap that cell when that larvae gets so big. And then at that time, again, the baby bee will come out and it'll start its cycle 21 days working in the hive. After 21 days working in the hive, they do an orientation flight. Now keep in mind, this queen has laid an egg, constantly laying eggs for hours and hours and hours at a time. This front of this frame right here you're looking at, there's over 2,000 cells on this side of the frame. So there's 10 of these frames inside a 10 frame hive. So that's a lot of baby bees, a lot of eggs she's been laying. So she'll just keep laying, keep laying. It's a good pattern. You could have one whole side of the frame filled out, which I've seen. Beautiful pattern. She's filled them all in. And but as they hatch, they're going to hatch in cycles, right? This one was, 21, this one's 20, this one's 19, so on and so forth. So they'll keep hatching and coming out. But after the 21 days inside, they're going to fly out of the hive, and they're going to do what they call an orientation flight. They've got the greatest GPS system in the world. So you got to figure they got to fly. They fly for 5 miles and then be able to come right back to that entrance on that hive. So I wish I had that, But anyways, some of the issues that the bees have outside the hive are, of course, bees, spiders, anything else that can eat a bee, a wasp, yellow jackets, so on and so forth. There's bad guys out there wanting to eat these bees. So if the queen gets to the point that the hive says, well, you're not doing your job well enough, we're bringing in more, you're not laying enough eggs, they will create a queen cell. They will create a queen cell on the side of the frame. So it's called a supersedure cell. And so what they'll do is they'll form a cell, and she'll go deposit an egg in it, and then they'll draw that queen cell out. They'll feed that cell royal jelly. And what the royal jelly does is it really strengthens the larvae into the queen itself. And it'll take 12 days for that queen to hatch, whereas it takes 21 days to get a worker bee to hatch. The drone bees hatch in 18 days. Now, if the hive gets crowded, if the cells are filled up with honey and pollen and a bunch of brood, and she's not feeling as though she's able to get more out to meet the demand, what they'll do is what they call a swarm. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard about swarms. They'll build a cell on the bottom of the frame, and it'll hang. There's usually, I believe there's like 3/8 between the frame and the top of the brood box, or bottom of the brood box. So they'll build a cell, and the same thing is what with the supersedure cell, except the queen will then say, okay, it's time to go. And she'll take half the bees with her. They'll leave the hive. But that queen cell hatch in 12 days. So there's more than just one queen cell. When they start making queen cells, they make more than one. And so that queen, the first queen to hatch, will go around and try and find the other queen cells. And she'll kill them. She'll kill off those other queen cells because she's going to have one queen per hive. There's something called a vibe or something. They make a certain noise. And when they do that in the hive, the other queen cells that are growing will make that same noise. And that's how that queen finds that other cell and kills that queen inside that cell that's growing. So then, after she's gone through the hive, make sure there's no more queen cells in there, she'll fly out to mate. She could be gone for about 9 days, maybe even longer. And she'll mate with multiple drone bees. There's some place out there in the heavens that these guys go to get mated. And so, of course, they'll mate with more than one. And then again, the GPS system brings her right back to this side. Now, depending upon the wind or weather or, it could rain or whatever, she might drift. She might drift off to, you got multiple hives here, she might drift to the wrong hive, just because of wind or whatever the circumstances are. Hopefully, she gets back to the cell. So if I go through my hive and I see that they've swarmed, or I find more queen cells and I can't find her, and indication is that they're getting ready to re-queen. So at which time I'm going to have to come back in about 15 days, and see, first of all, if that queen cell has been chewed out. See if she made it out. She'll chew out the end of the queen cell, and that's where she emerges from. And you can look through the other queen cells, and sometimes you can see where it's been chewed out on the side, where she chews into the side of the queen cell to get rid of it, or get rid of the other queens. But then I'll have to go back about a week later, week and a half later, and see if she's made it back and if she's laying eggs in the cell. So, and hopefully she's back and laying eggs in the cells. If not, what I'll probably do is go to another beehive and try and find a frame that has fresh eggs. Fresh eggs are standing on end, and they'll stand on end for 3 days. After the 3rd day, they'll start to lean over, and they'll start growing at that point. So I'll have to go through the other hive and try and find a frame that has standing eggs, shake the bees off of it, and then put it in that box and let them build another queen out of those eggs.
So the queen cell looks different than the...
Yes, it does. It looks more like a peanut, an elongated peanut. I mean, it looks just like a peanut. So it's not as big around as a peanut, but it's tapered, it's conical, but it stands out. So...
once that queen hatches, how long does it take her to leave to start mating? Does she immediately start fly out to start mating?
She's got to go through the hive and make sure she's killed off all the other queen cells. And then after she's done that, she feels confident she's got them all. She'll fly out.
How long does it normally take for her to go through the hive?
It just depends on how many queen cells
Okay.
are in the hive. How quick she moves.
Okay.
I can't give it. I don't know that answer.
Okay.
Did two of them ever make at the same time in life?
I don't know that either. So it could happen. I don't know.
How did you make a movie about that?
Fighting bees.
So you mentioned at the beginning that the life cycle of a honeybee is
63 days.
63 days. So if you think about like over the winter, don't they kind of go dormant
Yeah.
in the winter?
Good question. So the deal with that is that right now these forager bees are flying up to 5 miles.
Right.
They're flying back. They're depositing their load and then flying back out. So they're wearing themselves out. They're just exhausting everything they've got. Their wings are getting wore out. Everything's getting wore out. So they're going to start dying, at their 21 days. They're going to, if not dead before then. It just depends on how hard they work their bodies. But in the wintertime, what happens is right now they're building stores inside these frames. So they're putting away a lot of pollen and a lot of honey. And so in the wintertime, there's no more blooms coming, there's no more pollen or nectar coming in. So that's what they're going to live off. They're going to live off of what they've already got in the hive. And so that ball, like right now, there's probably, in this box, there's probably about, 2,300 bees, top and bottom. So this cluster of bees, which is probably about that big right now in the whole box, eventually that ball will go down to about the size of a baseball. And so they're not out flying, they're not out foraging, so they're not wearing themselves out. They're not really exerting themselves doing much at all, except they've got to generate heat because the temperature around the brood needs to be at least 95 degrees. And as you know, we get some cold temperatures. So how do they generate heat? Keep that brood alive. And the queen. Queen's very important. We got to keep her alive. We got to keep her fed. So what they'll do is they'll vibrate. They'll just sit there and vibrate. And that vibration generates heat. And so as the one in the center of doing all this vibrating, they're going to get tired. They're going to get exhausted. They're going to have to get, rebuilt or resourced. So, or rejuvenated. So what they're going to do is they're going to move to the outside of the hive where the honey and the nectar and pollen and all that is. They're going to work on filling up on that. And then eventually they're going to be right back in the middle again because this is just a constant cycle of the bees moving in and out. So they're not going to die as quickly as, for another thing, she's not going to lay. She lays according to what's going on outside as far as the resources coming in. There's a lot of resources coming in. She's going to say, oh, good, I need to lay more eggs. And so that's what she does. But as the resources become less and less, here, September, October, they're going to start pushing the boy bees out, the male bees. 98% of bees in this hive are female bees. That extra 2% of bees, of course, are male, and they're only good for one thing. So the queen is very important, obviously, but they'll start pushing out the drone bees because they're useless at this point. Yeah, so there's a lot of resources, and a lot of times what happens is these bees don't move in the right direction where the resources are. And so they end up what they call starving out. You open up your hive and you have a bunch of bees with their butts sticking out of the cell. The problem is they starved out. If they don't move in the right direction, they're going to starve out. They'll get cold and they'll starve out and they can't generate any heat. So that's a problem in the wintertime.
Really weird question. I'm not even a novice. Like I am the idiot. Okay. In the wintertime to help them out, like I know if I have chickens or whatever and it gets really cold, I'll put a heat lamp. Obviously you would probably put a heat lamp. But is there any sort of like insulation system people use in the winter to kind of help insulate and help them
So
out?
I know further up north, I love YouTube. Okay. I learned a lot of YouTube. But further up north, a lot of people do insulate their boxes, but here in where I live, here in East Tennessee, not so much. I run with one brood box is all I run with. I don't have double broods, just a single brood, and I use screen bottom boards, and I insert the foam board inside to help prevent.
I think you have an escapee.
Well, actually, there was two of them that came in here. And what they are forager bees from some other hive that was out there near the farmer's market. Okay, so they got on here, and inside of here, there's two holes. There's two holes, and what happened is those bees got down inside these holes. They're screened, so my bees can't get out, but the other bees are just sitting on top of these screens. So,
Oh, now they take it on their shoulders.
they're probably out this way. Just to let you know, I mean, some of you already know this, but don't go swatting at them, don't go swinging at them. So all you're going to do is really get them upset.
Yeah.
Okay, just let them do. He's sitting on your shoulder. She's sitting on your shoulder right now. She'll fly off here in a minute. She's not going to sting you. By the way, don't wear black when you wear these bees. They don't like black. So, just to let you know, when you start messing with their hives and you're wearing black, you get what you get. So, as far as in the summertime, how do we control the heat in the summertime? What they'll do is they'll fan. They'll get in front of the entrance and they'll sit there and flap their wings. Right now, this is a screen bottom board. I raised it up on the table even a little bit higher to get some more ventilation. They've been outside all day today and trapping this in close confinement. But it'll create a draft through here, and I can feel heat. When you come up here and look at this, you can feel the heat coming out of the top of this box. So 95 degrees is what they want their temperature. I think it's more than 95, but like I said, just come from outside. We don't want them to get too cold, but they'll sit there and fan their wings, and that create a air turbulence inside the entrance of that hive to help force the heat up and out.
So like if it's freezing, like we had last winter for a long time, it's really cold. Should you put like a blanket or a over it or something just so it'll be warm?
That's not what, I'm not gonna tell you no. I'm just gonna tell you, I'm not done anything different than, I put the hive on. But I can tell you that before my bees go into winter, I'll go out there and I'll put gallons of feed on those bees, because I want them to fill up as much as they can. That way, if they don't head in this direction where the feed is, hopefully they'll go this way, and there is feed. Because if you don't keep stores on your bees, they're gonna starve. You don't keep resources available for them, they will starve. They move wherever they want to move. You can't tell them which way to go, obviously. But, if you won't have food on every frame for them to get something to eat, they're gonna die. They're just gonna die.
So my sister that lives in Michigan, she has the beehive, and she did not put a covering on it, but she did put a food source immediately outside.
Yeah.
The hive, so if it gets sunny and they go out, there's food right there.
Yeah, there's multiple applications for putting feed on these bees. Okay, there's got different attachments you can put on your hive. They got top bar feeders, they got inside feeders, frame feeders, they've got the pollen patties, there's all kinds of stuff out there you can utilize to feed your bees during the winter. But again, as soon as the weather gets down below 90 degrees, 85 preferably, I'll treat all my bees with formic acid. And what formic acid will do is the vapor will penetrate the comb, the cappings on the brood. And what happens there is that you've heard of the varroa mite. Everybody's heard of varroa victor is what they call them also. The varroa mite. It's like a tick. And as the tick gets on you, it sucks your blood, it turns around, injects your body with some virus of some sort. Same thing happens with these guys. The tick gets on, it's called the varroa. It gets on it, it starts eating fats of the bee, and it puts a virus back into the bee. So when that queen's going around laying eggs, these varroas will also deposit eggs on the queen's egg, which is a varroa mite. And so that varroa mite will start growing with that larvae. It will live off of that larvae as it's growing. So at any time you go through, and again, YouTube's great. You can go through there and they'll take the capping off of a brood cell, and they'll pull that larvae out. And I've seen as many as 5 varroa mites on this one larvae. So what that means is that larvae is probably not going to live very long anyway. So it's going to hatch, it's going to come out. But what happens with those 5 varroa mites, they're going to jump on other bees. They're going to keep moving around. And so the hive just gets infested with these varroa mites, which is going to kill the hive. It'll kill the hive. So go ahead.
Do you need to treat them in the first year? Let's say you have a brand new hive, and in the first year, do you need to treat it, or do you generally wait till the next year?
So if I wait till the temperature gets to where it needs to be, formic acid has to be applied at a certain temperature. If it's too hot, it'll kill the hive. So you got to wait till it's a certain temperature for 5 days, 5 to 7 days. So when I apply that, that's when I'll put it on. Your question is the first year? Yes, I treated my hives the first year. And what I found was that, some hives I didn't, some hives I did. Experimental thing, I lost the hives that I didn't treat because the varroa mites is so bad that they'll take out a hive. So I would suggest you do treat them. What you treat them with, there's a multitude of things out there. And I'm using an organic product called formic acid. It comes in a pad. They also have liquid form. What's his name? There's a fellow over here in Middle Tennessee. But anyways, he does drip formic acid, and it works good for him. But I put it on top of my hives, and I let it sit there you can leave it there for 7 days if you want. You come out and take them off. But what they say is you can leave it on there indefinitely. The bees will carry it out of the hive. I take mine off, and I found the best results doing it.
Just set it on the frame?
On top of the frame. So it's a pad about this big. So it'll lay across 7, 8 of the frames. And there's 2 of them per brood box. And so what that does, it'll saturate that hive Now, no supers are on. This is strictly just brood chamber. And so it'll saturate that hive, also get inside those cells, in the cappings of those cells, and kill the varroa mites that are living on those larvae that are growing.
So talk about these terms. What, you use the word super and then something else.
A brood box is the main box that you want to raise brood. Okay, and then if there's another box you put on top, I put this piece between this glass and this box is called a queen excluder. And I put that queen excluder on top of that brood box to make sure she doesn't get up into my sutures. I don't want to harvest any honey and there be bee parts. People don't like that.
No bee parts.
Well, I mean, you think about it. I mean, it's just, to me, it's just, why kill the larvae, harvesting honey that could be down inside the brood box and be working on trying to support the hive?
So the lower level is the brood box, and then you have supers on top of that.
That's correct. That's correct. That's usually where we store the honey. That's where they store the honey. So, but yeah, I mean, it's queen excluder is very beneficial. And everything I'm telling you, everybody has their own opinion about this. So I'm not an expert. This is what's worked for me over the past 8 years. That's what I'm trying to let them know. This is what worked for me. And I also want to tell you this, I'd be more than happy to help any of you. If you get into this beekeeping, I'm more than happy to help. I would need a lot more younger people not that the old people can't do it, okay? But I'm just saying, we need more younger people getting involved in this. We need much younger audience paying attention to what's going on to our environment and to know when to spray and when not to spray. But that's my biggest pitch ball is we need younger people to go ahead.
So I see bees on the top. What's in the bottom part of that box?
There's more frames just like this.
Oh, just like that down below?
Yeah. So these frames down below have brood in them, larvae, eggs. So last night before it got dark, I went out to the hive, up to the apiary there at the house, and I started looking for this queen. So we ended up with three frames in here before I could find the queen. And this frame here, I picked it up, and sure enough, she was
So
on
that's
this.
like just a display box. They don't.
This is just an observation hive. That's what this is called. This is not something they live in. So some people actually bore a hole in the side. And what they'll do is they got an adjustment gauge on it. And they'll hook a tube to it and run it out a window or out a wall.
Oh, okay.
And they can sit there and let the bees come in and out and they can watch what they're doing on this.
Okay.
But this work is just, for me, an observation hive to help educate people and give them an opportunity to see what's going on. The difference between the queen and a worker bee. And if there's more brood in here, you'd be able to, I mean, not brood, but drones, you'd be able to see more drones,
What's the difference between a drone and a worker bee?
male and female.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. So, there is another mite that crawls up a bee's nose. It gets into its nose, and it's a trachea system. It's called the trachea mite. And so what it does is you'll see tracks of diarrhea on the hive. When you see little trails on your hive, what it is, that's the diarrhea because of that trachea mite is in that bee, and it's messing up that bee. So there's ways of treating that as well. So wax moths. Wax moths are bad characters. They'll wipe out a hive in a week. As far as once that wax moth lays its larvae inside that hive, it'll lay it right here on the edge. And that larvae will work its way in. And it gets into that frame, she'll lay multiple. The moth will lay multiple eggs. And they get inside that frame, they'll bore tunnels through the wax. They'll slime it, not slime it as much as web it. They'll put webbing all through the frame. It's nasty. It's just, so you got to pay attention to your hive. It's not one of those things where you can just sit out there and come back and think you're going to get honey. It doesn't work like that. It just doesn't.
So how often do you look at your hives?
Once a month. I go through it once a month. In April, I start checking it like every 2 weeks. In May, I may go through it, just depending upon how I feel about the hives, I may go into it every week because I don't want them to grow so fast that they decide to swarm. I don't want them to swarm. So sometimes what I can do is I go in, if I see a few queen cells because she's saying, oh, it's getting crowded in here, I'm fixing to leave. I'll make a split. I'll take that frame that has that queen cell on it, and I'll move it over here into another box. So now I'm starting a new hive over here. I'll have some more frames in it, to accommodate the other bees, but I can move frames that have queen cells on them into another box, and then take a frame and put it back in here that has more space. So wax is gold. Wax frames is gold to a beekeeper. So if you got wax frames, you're ahead of the game. It's not the honey, it's the wax foundation you've got.
Do you open the hive in the winter when it's around?
No, I don't. So good point. So after I do the formic acid test, I'm going to be putting all the feed on that I can, and I'll go through that hive probably November-ish, and I'll see where they're at. You don't necessarily have to open the hive up. A lot of times you can just go behind and lift it up. You don't see how heavy it is when you lift it. From the back end, just lift it, and you'll be able to tell if it's got a lot of resources in it or not. But I'm not that good. So I've got to go in and I've got to look, just pick up the frame, take a quick glance, see how much is capped, see how much is shiny. When you look at this side here, you'll see some shiny product. More so on that side. But, and that's what that is. That's stores that they put in since, I harvested the honey last weekend, but I don't harvest any honey out of my brood box. That is strictly brewed food. So if any honey they bring up to my supers, I'll harvest that. But to the question, not in the wintertime, I don't go through it. Now, what I will do in the wintertime is I will come back and treat with oxalic acid. So the bee, as far as the bee population growing, it starts slowing down in August, September. So the amount of bees in that hive is getting smaller and smaller, getting ready to go into winter because the stores aren't there anymore. And so there's not as many eggs being dropped. So I'll go back with oxalic acid, and I use what they call a fogger. There's a fumer and a fogger. My fogger is, some people might know that they run off propane, and you put the chemical inside, and you put this propane bottle to it, and light it off, and it'll just, a cloud, just a fog is what will come out of it. But that works very, very well for me. I've had some sticky boards underneath it after I've treated, and I've gone back 2 days later and pulled it out. I'm just amazed how many dead varroa mites were on that sticky board. But I use that and twice. I'll do it in November, and then I'll turn around and do it again middle of December, but before Christmas. I'll get it done before Christmas. And then I won't go back into that hive until, like I said, March, April area. So to check where they're at.
So which time of the year do you use the oxalic acid?
I use the oxalic acid. I use it more so in the wintertime. Because oxalic acid, when the fog goes in there, or vaporizer, if you use a vaporizer, it creates a cloud in there, and that cloud goes and hits all the bees. And it'll kill all the varroa mites that it comes in contact with. But in the wintertime, there's not as many eggs, there's not as much brood in the wintertime, right? So she quit laying as much. So I don't have to worry about as many varroa mites being inside the cells, growing with the larvae. There's a few, but not very many.
What about the formic acid? So
Formic acid, I just use first thing as soon as the temperature gets down low enough, I want to put it on as quick as possible. As soon as that temperature's down below 85 degrees for 7 days, I want to put that formic acid on.
before you put the super on?
There's no supers on. This is after I pulled all the supers off. So I usually pull my supers first week of July. This year we did it first week of June so we could have something to bring to the market. Because.
Because, thank you.
But usually I pull the first week of July. I don't know when you would harvest. Anybody else harvesting honey? Okay, so that's when I do it, because then I'm thinking, okay, I pull that off, get that put away. I won't harvest again. There's some people who harvest in the fall. I don't do that. Again, I'm different. But I want them to start bringing in what they can bring in and start putting it away for storage for over winter. You know, that way I don't have to feed them as much. Go ahead.
So when you harvest, you don't put your supers back on, you just leave just the main brood box.
Actually, I do put them back on. So what happens in the harvesting process is I got this serrated knife. They got hot blade knives, but I use a serrated knife. And I sit there and I cut the wax cappings off. And then I extract the honey. And then I put all the frames back in the box. Now, if you ever looked at a frame after somebody run a serrated knife across, it looks pretty bad. So I put it back in the box, and I take it back out to the apiary, and I put it back on top of the queen excluder, and I let those bees go up in there, and they'll clean all that up. So when I get that box back off, which I'll be taking it back off, I got this bee escape that I put between the super and the queen excluder. The bees can go down, but they can't come back up. And so when I go take that off, which we're going to be taking some up this afternoon, but when I take that box off and get ready to put it in the store, and I put it in the freezer. That's another issue. But I put it in the freezer and then I store it for over winter.
The entire box of the frame.
The whole box. It all goes as a box. It's all one unit, 10 frame unit. So, but yeah, they do a perfect job. After I put that back on there, they clean up all those rough edges. I mean, it looks like it's very pristine. Something like what this looks like now. It's very clear. Whereas, you know, cut with a knife, a serrated knife, it boogers it up.
So you just leave it on there a week or something, or?
Yeah, a week. About a week is what we do. And then we take it back off. So, well, we don't take it off. Put the the bee escape in, and then the bees go down. After a couple of days, I'm out there pulling those boxes off and putting them in the freezer. I put them in the freezer because of the wax moth larvae, and I put them in there because of the hive bee larvae. You know, they say to let it freeze for 2 days because the wax moth larvae can live in freezing temperatures for 32 hours or something like that. They recommend you put it in the freezer for 36 hours. Now, I did have one super that when I went to take it off, it had a bunch of wax moth in it. Why it didn't go down the blue box, I don't know, but it just stayed in the super. So I'd take that super and immediately go put it in the freezer. I will not process a super that's had wax moths in it. Again, for the same reason, you know, I don't want that in the honey when I extract it. I don't want you having to, if you buy honey, I don't want you to get stuck with that stuff that the wax moth have in them. But the same thing with the hive bees. Hive bees need to be frozen out, and their larvae need to be frozen out.
So, but once you do that and take it off, then from there on, like from mid or in July, you just have the brood box. You don't have any supers.
That's correct. That's correct.
If you have wildflower honey, how do you distinguish? Another person might say they have red clover honey. How do you keep the bee from deciding to only go over here or only go over here?
Yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea how to do that. So I can tell you that clover honey, if early spring, the first thing we have coming up is dandelions, then clover, right? So usually early in the spring, people sometimes rob their hives, and it's clear, almost clear. So if you look at this honey here, this is the darkest honey we've ever processed. It's pretty dark. And what they're saying is we had a lot of tulip poppers this year, a lot of blooms on tulip, and that's what created the honey to be so dark, is tulip poppers. So depending upon what's out there at the time and what there's plenty of, those bees are going to bring back in. That's what caused the honey to be. Now, if I lived down in Florida and I had all these orange fields, it's safe to say, within 5 mile radius, it's all orange field. Well, yeah, I can say that's orange blossom honey, right? So we don't have that here.
What if they go and feed on like an onion blossom? Would your honey taste like an onion?
I don't know. But I mean, when you taste that honey is the wildflower honey that they were able to get and bring back to the hive. That's a good question. I I don't know that answer. I know some of you may have heard about this, but down there in Atlanta, a beekeeper down there, he went to harvest his honey. It's purple. Yeah. Yeah. So what happened is there's M&M's chocolate factory down there. And the bees were going down there getting that purple sweetener that they put on the shelf, they dumped out somewhere or something, and they brought that back. And it's pretty popular, you know, people really thought it was good. So it depends on what they can bring in, what color your honey's gonna be.
You rescue bees, if somebody finds one, like we found some in a tree, and we had somebody come up and they cut that piece of the tree out, took it home.
It's great you mentioned that because a woman came to me today at the farmer's market and asked me about that. She said, hey, you know, outside our second story bedroom, there's a tree with a knot and a squirrel.
Yeah.
And so the bees moved in. What should we do? I said, can you leave them? Well, it'd be okay, you can leave it there. He said, yeah, we have no intentions of moving. We don't, but is it okay? I said, it's okay if you're okay, you know, but I can tell you what they'll do if they come and try and retrieve that hive, is they got ways of checking the density of a tree, find out how thick it is. They'll figure out where the thickest part is above that buoy, and they'll cut it. They'll take that top off. And then they'll go down to the bottom, find out where the thickness is down there, and they'll cut it. And they'll have a way of picking that part they cut out, pick it up and load it on a truck, and they'll haul it somewhere and stand it up and let that bee hive continue living in that log. Good people would do that. Other people would just spray. So,
Yeah, we didn't want
yeah,
to spray,
we-
we had somebody come pick it up.
yeah, we have went and recovered some swarms. It's about 5 weeks ago. There was this guy transporting bees from west to east. I live off exit 36. And apparently this guy pulled over to rest on the exit. And he had been sitting there for a while. Cars are going by, getting on the interstate. They were concerned because there's a swarm of bees around this truck, you know. And they were worried that, oh my God, this guy, what's something wrong with this fellow? So they called Tennessee Highway Patrol, which called Roane County, and they were concerned because they couldn't get close to the truck to check on the guy because they didn't have bee equipment. So they ended up calling. And they said, hey, do you mind coming out and check? You know, we want to make sure this guy's okay in this truck because it's not moving. So I got on my suit, went out there, went to check on it. Well, he was gone. When I got there, the truck was gone. And I asked him, well, where'd he go? He said, well, it must be okay. You go on. Well, that's good. Right? So anyway, so I went back out there because there's a massive ball of bees out there. And sure enough, there was a swarm up in one of those trees. There was actually two of them. But I got the biggest and I took it to my apiary and it lived. It
How
survived.
did you get that?
So I got a vacuum. It's called a bee vac. And I made it myself. So not to brag, but I made it myself. So as you can imagine, a shop vac kind of thing sucks so hard, you can imagine what the consequence of the bee would be when they hit that drum. Well, this is a way to adjust the vacuum. And I went up there with the vacuum and had a generator, and, you know, suck those bees up. And I was fortunate that I was able to suck the queen up because I couldn't see it because I was standing on a ladder. But and it was higher than I could see. So, but anyways, I sucked it up. I took it back to the house and dumped it in a box, and it survived. It was a good hive. But when I went back to get the other one, it was a smaller cluster. It was about this big, and I sucked it up and I put it in another box at the house, and there was no point.
It was interesting to watch them do it because they screened it off so that they came real early in the morning and it screened off all the holes, bees can fly out.
Yep.
And then they cut the top off, they cut this piece off, they took that, put it on a flatbed trailer.
Yep.
And then he sent me a picture of where he set it up.
That's funny. Oh, those are
Much
good.
better than using
Yeah.
pesticides and killing all these bees.
Right.
But the tree had to come down. It was really, really bad.
That's great. That's wonderful. I like people like that.
But it was kind of hard to find somebody.
It is very, very, that's due diligence on your part.
We kept working on it. We weren't gonna give up. These have a response, so people would say that the commercialized agricultural bees interfere with the native pollinated bees.
I'm not by no means, and I'm not gonna get into that debate because sometimes what these commercial beekeepers are doing now, more so than ever, is they're starting to sell off some of these bees that they have because they can't keep up. They're dying out too quick. It's becoming not a very good business for anymore. You know, they used to pay people $250 for a hive, one hive. If I took my hive out into the almond fields, they would pay $250 for that one. So you figure if somebody had 10 of those, you know, and put them out there on almond, they're doing pretty good. But they're really struggling with this varroa mite and the hive beetles and wax moths. It's a struggle. It's really hard. So and it's hard to get people to work the hives. You know, it's hard to get people to go out there. It's hot. You know, and you got to put that bee suit on and so on and so forth. It's hard work, especially if there's like thousands of hives that they got to go through.
So if you were to take your hive and put it on somebody else's property so that you could produce more honey, do people pay for that opportunity?
No, and I'm not going to move a hive to somebody's property to try to make more honey. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm more interested in environmental impact. I want people to see bees. If you don't see bees in your yard or any other pollinators, we need to get something out there, you know, to start that pollination process. Because a lot of people spend a lot of money on shrubbery and bushes and flowers and what have you. And if those things don't get pollinated, well, they may not come back, you know. So we need to be focusing on, you know, it's not the honey. This offsets a lot of the costs that I do have, like the formic acid, the oxalic acid, the bee equipment and bee suits and other things. So I'm not out for the money. That's not what I'm.
Somebody has asked somebody I know if they can put hives on their property and they didn't offer any compensation.
No, I'm not. Yeah.
No, so the person's asking me, should I ask you to be compensated?
Yeah.
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 And they want like 10 hives. So I would think they could at least share some money, right?
Well, and that is what I do. Okay. I do give people who I do have hives, and it's just my appreciation that they're compassionate about the environmental impact. We have one lady that was at the Chrissy Tebow or she lives 30 minutes from my house. You know, a good distance. Out there towards like 10 miles. Not just 10. So you know, I'm taking hive out there, a couple hives out there at her place because she's concerned about she doesn't see any bees out there. So I'm okay with that. And when we process honey, didn't get any honey off of the place. Okay, this is the first year I put them out there, but the fact that she was conscientious enough to try and take care of that, we did give some honey to them, you know, because we do.
Which I appreciated, Sean. Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm sorry. You look different.
I know,
But,
I'm here upset. I'm like, I think you're talking about me.
Yeah.
So if you want to start a beehive, what's the best time of year?
I would start in spring, but let me say this: you need to really try and get involved with a bee club. Knoxville's got a good bee club. Roane, Morgan's got a good bee club. Talk to those folks. Get with those folks. You're just hearing one side of it. There's thousands of sides to it. Okay, so listen to what they have to say too, and then it'll have to be what'll work best for you. Okay, I would start in the spring. That's when they sell the nukes and the packages and so on and so forth. But make sure you have all your stuff readily available to go. You know, they're not going to build. You get a package and you have no wax on any of your frames. You're probably not going to get a lot done that year. You know, because they spend a lot of time building that wax. Like I said, wax is gold. If you got wax frames, you're rich. So I would. Queen varies in price, so you can spend as much as $55, $58 on one bee. So, but what you also look at is the genetics. There's genetics in bees. Some people are tinkering with those things. You know, if you got a bee that produces a lot more bees that produce more wax, and that's what you want, you'll try and find you a bee that, you know, genetics show that this bee provides more wax. So, and that's what you want. You really want bees to provide more wax. There are some bees out there that will go through, and if they detect something's wrong with the larvae, they'll cut that larvae out. They'll drag that larvae out if they detect that it's VH something, VH, I forget where it is right now, but there's a bee out there that will, if they detect that larvae's bad, they'll drag it out. They'll drag it out of the hive. So there's a lot of things going on, you know, out there that you can learn. And again, I would strongly suggest you join the bee club of some sort. So,
Yeah, we had, Myra, my wife, she started these, just a few months back. And we started feeding, we put 2 feeders out, so to keep the bees right there when we got our colony. And she ran into a problem where some of the bees were dying off. And she looked at us, like, bees are dying, bees are dying. And she's with the club, and the only thing that they could come up with was the jar that she was feeding on might have been
I watch it, so.
put in the dishwasher. And so it was through the dishwasher, and it might have had a little bit of soap left on as she was, feeding and stuff. And they said, now you want to give a plastic water jug when you're feeding. Use a plastic water jug and never your jar. There's a new jar to you, and you don't use it that way. We had a lot of bees at the time. They recouped. They didn't recoup last week. Just took the feeders off.
so we just got through harvesting, and what I do after I harvest is I take all the equipment, the filters, the knives, the decappers, the extractor. I take all that stuff out, and I've got a lean-to inside one of my sheds, and I lay the plastic out that we had to stand on to keep the mess from getting all over the garage. But we take all that and lay it out, and let the bees, all the bees that can get there, just wide open bees, go in there and clean that up. And so if you went out there right now, you would see just what you're mentioning, that there's a lot of dead bees there. Why are there dead bees when all they're doing is harvesting the honey that's already been harvested? What they say is a lot of times they'll gorge themselves. They'll consume so much they can't fly.
That's what I was thinking too.
So,
we had double feeders.
right. So I'm not going to say that they're wrong, but I can tell you when I put, I periodically put tracheomite treatments on my hives, and my jars go through my dishwasher, and then I take them out and I add this. It's what do you call that oil? Natural oil, lemongrass, and spearmint in this solution, and I put that on my hives. I mean, my bees aren't being, they're not dying because of that. So I'm not going to say that's not what happened. I don't know, but I know that I've got a lot of dead bees, laying around that equipment right now. And so that'd be one of the things that we'll be cleaning up today or tomorrow. Is just a lot of dead bees. I think they just overtorch themselves and they die. So when you filter this honey, you got to have different micron screens. And I've got this one screen, it's 200 micron screen, and I laid it on. It's already cleaned off. I dumped out all the dead bee in it, and I set it back down so they could finish whatever, if there was anything left. I didn't want to just pick up one screen and walk away. Still, the next day I went out there, and there's still a bunch of dead bees in the bottom of that screen. And I thought, well, why? There's nothing in it. There's nothing for them to eat. But I don't know. I just don't know if that was the end of their 21 days or what. I don't know. But I have quite a few dead bees. So, and that's something else to look at. You go out to your hive, you see a bunch of dead bees in front of the hive, that's a flag. There's something going on. So you need to try and figure out if any of your neighbors have been spraying. A lot of people spray their yards. They don't want dandelions. They don't want clover. They don't want this stuff. So, but just keep in mind that hopefully you live in a neighborhood that people will respect the fact that you got bees. And you let them know that you got bees. So I would strongly suggest you talk to your neighbors before you get bees, if you haven't already. So I actually go around and ask my neighbors if they're allergic, because I know what the bad side is. And you got to worry about people who have swimming pools. Because kids get out there around swimming pools and they leave their Coca-Cola can sitting out on the table, and those bees go down in that Coca-Cola can and they'll sting a kid for sure. And they put their hand up on the paddock on the pool, and a bee stings them again because the bees want water, and it's being scared right now, so it's going to defend itself. So just keep those kind of things in mind. That where you place your hives, it's your responsibility to make sure you take care of your neighbors. Otherwise, we spray everything. Because once one kid gets stung in the lip, on the tongue, or the lip, it's your be the dick. So,
So Shaw, we just have a little bit more time, but so for all of us that don't have this, what advice do you give us? So not to spray.
right, well,
And what else? Is there anything else? Just plant?
honestly, people are gonna spray. They're gonna spray. Some of you people in here spray. I mean, you just do it, okay? There's a good time and a bad time. Late in the evening is okay. Do not spray if there's blooms. If you see a flower, please don't spray the bloom, okay? There are other ways of applying herbicide, and what we sometimes use is vinegar and pool salt. We'll mix that up, dissolve that salt in that vinegar and spray it. It's not the greatest, but it works. So just be considerate when you're spraying, the time of day it is and what you are spraying with. If there's blooms, please don't spray, because it's not just the honeybee, it's the butterflies, it's the moths, it's the yellow jackets. I don't like yellow jackets. It's those things, other pollinators that are out there that we've got to make sure we take care of. And that's, that's my biggest take, is that we try to be careful when we're spraying herbicides or pesticides. So, what was the other question?
And that's it. Are there other questions? I just don't want to keep people past.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Shanti, do you harvest the wax? Because you said wax is gold.
I did, but some woman came in and bought all this wax I had second. So right before, I was closing up shop and she came in and said, I'd like to have all that. So, yeah, we do harvest, which burr comb or it's cappings on the super frames. We take that off and we keep it separate and we sell it. So, but yeah, we try to use everything we can. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Which is something else I could help you with.
Thank you.
I would be happy to help anybody in this room. You guys are wonderful that you've taken the time to work on environmental impact as far as master bee gardeners. You know what you're planting. You hopefully know that it's hopefully bee friendly, or pollinator friendly, so please keep it up. That's what we need. We need more people like yourselves that are conscientious about the environment that we all live in. So.
Would you be willing to come out and just help us set up?
I sure would.
Okay.
I really would. So,
We're looking at next spring.
yeah, make sure you got all your equipment. Are you allergic to bees? Okay. I would, for my safety, please get a jacket, of course, and gloves, and don't go wear them black. Okay, don't wear black.
I don't want very much black.
So, yeah.
But once I get all my equipment and everything.
Yes, I would be more than happy to come.
Set it up.
I'm mentoring 3 other people right now. So, yeah, I really want more younger people getting into this. So I'll do whatever I can to help people out.
So we have an 11-year-old that we still want to teach her.
Great.
That I can try to teach her that
That's
she
really
butterflies are so good. Not to kill them.
Very good.
Thank you. Andrew has an announcement about another event coming up.
Oh, yes. We've got a very special opportunity next Tuesday to go to the Knoxville Botanical Gardens. We have a reservation at 10 o'clock in the morning, and it's going to be on bees and pollinators. And Susan Kiss has been kind enough to take time out of her very busy workday to work with us on pollinators. So any that might want to come, I know Jill's going, Elaine's going, Donna's going, Jay and I are going. Any of you that want to join us there at the Knoxville Botanical Gardens, it's at the Boyd's Bridge entrance. You can go to any entrance, but you'll have to walk if you don't go to the Boyd's.
Is that on
Bridge.
the 11th?
On the 11th, 10 o'clock. So it takes about an hour and a half from here. So just to give you a feel of time.
And how long does that go for?
As long as I guess Susan wants to talk, but I'd say probably not more than an hour and a half.
10 to 12.
And the Knoxville Botanical Gardens is actually built on the site of the old nursery, the Press Nursery. So the mansion's not still there, but most of the old stone walls are there. It's really a wonderful experience. And of course, it's a very large garden, so you could, spend all day there if you like.
Is this the site that was a land grant from the Revolutionary War?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was. The way the property first came into being is it was a land grant that somebody earned instead of wages from the Revolutionary War.
That's probably right, but it's fairly.
It's very cool place.
It's a very interesting place. They used to have a movie, but evidently the movie went away because even Susan didn't know what I'm talking about.
So does everybody have a number?
Yes.
Oh, wow, that's cool. Is that the same, or is it just
No.
she can go forever?
No, she can't go forever. About 2.5 years she's bought it. After about 2.5 years.
So she can live 2.5, 3 years?
No.
Right.
Yeah, so I mark my queens. That way I know, like this year, the color is red. I know this spring when I went through and marked a lot of my queens this year. So next year, the color might be blue. So anything that comes new next year, as far as queens go, I'll mark them blue.
Okay,
That way I got an idea how big they are.
okay, then, yeah, okay, but they're outside that 21 day.
That's correct.
And you want them to come up and look, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
you're more than welcome to take a look
afterwards?
at
That'd be great.
it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Sean. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you all for doing what you do.
Now, we're gonna pull some numbers. Everybody got a number? Okay. We might have extra numbers.
Today's my lucky day. Maybe it's
You want me to pull? Okay, number 16.
That's great.
All right. So we'll let 16 have the first. Yeah. This is all thanks to Sean and his beans. Working it in.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's
And you sell this honey every Saturday at the Jinx?
As long as it lasts. So it goes pretty quick. It's just done. We got about 30 gallons this year. And we got cut cones. The first year we did cut cones.
Yeah.
And so it was selling pretty good too. I'm not after the sale. Don't get me wrong, I'm not after this. I just want to keep educating people. And as you educate people, they become more interested.
hopefully it's what's mine.
Yeah. Number 22. Oh, I get this girl. She's a lucky one she won last time.
Which, by the way, the plant is still alive.
Hey, that girl.
And doing really well.
Yeah. Okay.
I would go.
And the next one is 25. Anybody have a 25? We might have a few. We'll go with 15. All right.
Thank you so much.
So we usually have door prizes if you come in person. Thank you for coming.
Here she is right here.
That's complete.
Yeah.